Right, these are the barrels off of the 1200 Model U with the sidecar. We stripped the first one and it had some marking in it, but nothing too major. So you can see where it's been scored, but they're not actually into the metal. But when I took the rear cylinder head off, so that's got pickup, you can see the aluminium. You see that bright area there? Yeah? Yeah. That's where it's melted the piston, and the aluminium's actually stuck into the metal of the bore. So if you look on the piston on the engine, so that was the front one we took apart, which you can't feel it, it's not the end of the world. Yeah? But the back one, that's had it. Yeah. You can actually feel that in there. So with my rudimentary measuring, the back barrel is larger in diameter than the front barrel. But this is stamped up. You've got a C there, which normally equates to a barrel size. So you've got a C on that one, which is the back one, and you've got a CC, double C on that one. So whether that's genuine or not, I don't know, or an engineering company's done it. But why it'll be marked up different, I don't know. They're normally a size donut, you know, designation. So all I'm going to do, pop the valves out, make sure the valve guides are okay. I think they are, and then get them sent off and see what size pistons we need, oversized pistons. Get them rebored out. So I know you can get plus 100 pistons, and these are on 50 already. But in rebore, in terms, 50 thou is a
big difference.
Big old chunk, you know. Can't use my normal one. I've got my nice little one I use for WLAs, the 750s, but it's too small for these. Take your keepers out. Yeah, there's a little bit in them, nothing major though. They'll be alright. Again, I think Alex probably later on in the year will bring everything back and have it all completely rebuilt anyway.
Yeah.
And there's all your bits that go with them. Should be a gasket on there. Yeah, there it is. A little worn away. So that would have leaked oil everywhere. Yeah, there's a little bit in them, but nothing major, mate. So give all them a clean up. There's no pickup on them, no lip. Right, so that can now be sent off and see what they can bore them to, and then we can get the pistons to suit. You can't just go and buy pistons, you've got to see what the engineering company says to how much the overbore you need, you know?
Yeah.
That's fine. Right, so literally now that can go off and be looked at, see what size pistons we can get. I mean, that's pretty deep in there. But I can't seem to source these barrels as a replacement unit at all. So worst case scenario, if they can't get 50 thou on that, then they get sleeved, and then you go back down to standard size pistons. So
I see. They put an extra layer in there.
If you can't bore that out,
yeah,
to your plus another 50 thou because the grooves are too deep in there.
Yeah.
Then what they do is they machine it back and they fit a sleeve in.
Yeah.
And then you can go back down to standard size.
Okay.
It's called a liner, bore liner. So that's that really, Stu.
This is from Craig Wilson. He says, where do you get the seat buffer / helper spring that the WLA has?
It's just a generic spring, as long as you take your seat off, and if it fits down over the seat post, that's all it is. It's a coil spring wherever you can find one, you know. You can get springs made, there's spring manufacturers, but as long as it fits down over the seat post,
yeah,
that's all you need. It's just seen quite a few of them with them, but it's because they did all the different seat post spring rates. Yeah, for we showed the picture before of all the different rates and everything. Ow. So if you're too heavy for the spring rate you got in there, your seat will just keep bottoming out on the post. So you just put that extra spring in there.
And where would you get that from? Is that from like
a spring supplier?
Oh, I see. It's not necessarily.
No, it wasn't a Harley part. No, it wasn't a Harley part. No.
Macca's Shed. G'day Ash. Is there any way to upgrade the WLA front brake without throwing it out completely? It is truly horrible, but I would like to maintain the look of it.
Yeah, they are horrible. You can put a longer arm on them, on the actuating arm, because they were originally left-hand front brake.
Yep.
They're even worse because you have to put the brake lever on past the switches. So your handlebar's there, your grip, and the brake lever's up here.
Okay.
If you put them on the right-hand side, you can definitely get more purchase because you can bring them back further in towards your hand grip. Another big one on them is where the brake shoes are. You've got to make sure that the springs are on the brake plate side when you hook the brake springs on.
Yeah.
If you put them this side, it pulls the brake shoes like that.
Yeah.
You want it to pull back the other way so they sit square in the drum, because otherwise you're only getting a little bit of purchase, a little bit of area rubbing on it. So they've got to be fitted like that, with the spring on the back plate side. Making sure the cable's completely oiled up really well. There's plenty of free movement on the cable. You can get different linings for them, scratch them up, but it really doesn't make any difference. If you alter the angle of where your adjuster goes through on the cable on the back plate and make a longer actuating arm, because otherwise your cable comes out there and goes like that as opposed to running in a direct line. You want to make sure all of that's pulling in a straight direct line. You can get them with the two holes in. I think one says Solo on it and the other one's Cervicar or something. I can't remember now. But yeah, it's the only way you'll get any more purchase on it is that.
Okay.
Putting harder springs in them doesn't make any difference realistically. It's making sure that those shoes are lined up with the drum. That's your biggest problem. But they are crap.
Kimo90808 says, I've rebuilt a gearbox. Parts were either real good or real bad, not much in between. I installed a new old stock starter clutch. Cluster gear looked fine. But the kicker still looks, though, intermittently, as if the starter gear doesn't engage. Usually when in a hurry, I noticed. I haven't a Scooby Why. I have to take it apart again, fine, but not until I have an idea what to look for. No clue what it could be.
Well, in the gear cluster, you've got to make sure that all the spacing washers that go in there and the needle rollers are the right length. They have to be correct.
Yeah.
If you've got too much end float on it, that's your tripper bolt end, yeah? Mm-hmm. That holds your starter clutch in. Now, if all of your spacers that go in there are wrong or only very slightly out, it's letting that cluster gear come back this way.
Yeah.
Generally, if they're too big, it will push it all back this way.
Yeah.
It can only go so far because of the outer casing when it goes on, but that outer casing bush that the kickstart arm goes through, if that phosphor bronze bush is worn out, that's letting everything come this way again. Definitely put a new bush in there and assemble it without the sealing rubber on it first of all. You don't want hardly any play on that end motion at all when the tripper bolts are in.
Yeah.
Because that shaft, I'm going to get one over. Right. See that that's completely chewed up.
Yeah.
That should be nice and square edged. Now you've got your casing goes on there with a phosphor bronze bush. Yeah? Now if that phosphor bronze on that end, it's got a lip on it to stop you pushing it all the way through.
Yeah.
If that's worn out, then that gear cluster, even if you put all the right, there's 4 spacer washers in there, 2 are the same thickness, 180 thou, and the other 2 I can't remember off the top of my head what size they are, and it all depends on the length of your needle rollers as well. They've got to be the correct length. Again, back to the other book, it's got all the dimensions in there. If any of that is wrong, you've got to make sure the spring's in the end of there as well. That forces it all back that way.
Yeah.
If any of that lot isn't right, it will slip. You put a new starter clutch in it. On your gear cluster, the teeth that are in there don't normally wear out that badly. I would say that the spacings in there are wrong somewhere, and the lip on the edge of that bush has worn out.
Doesn't take much, does it, really?
It's just years and years and years and years of use, you know. That's still, once it starts doing that, it's just going to start chewing the end of the bush up. You've got to make sure that it's got a new bush, all new needle rollers that are exactly the correct length, and your 4 washers that sit in there have got to be right.
Cool.
Well, that, unless the actual casing is completely bollocks, then it will work. It's just something isn't correct measurement wise. That's why it takes so long to build them. You have to sit there and measure everything.
55 Rasmus, he says, should you mount the inlet manifold with the barrel snugged down so it can rotate the barrels to where it lines up with the manifold?
Yeah, there can be a right pain in the bum to fit. Yeah, leave them slightly loose, as he's saying, because you've got a little bit of creep on the base, on the 4 base studs. Get one started, only a few threads, and then try and get the other. They can be a right pain in the bum to do, but you've got to make sure that what they call the what I call it an olive, the brass tapered piece, is banged in hard to the manifold.
So you should.
Yeah, I mean, if it was all brand spanking new, you could bolt them down hard and it would probably fit, but they're old engines. Yeah, just leave them loose, so you've just got that little bit of creep on them. Cool. And then do them up finger tight as far as you can, then lock your base studs down, then nip them up with a spanner.
Gary Bianchi, maybe not English.
Maybe.
For you, how long does it take to fully assemble one of these WLs?
What, a whole bike?
Once you've got all the bits and pieces together to bolt it all together.
So engine completely rebuilt?
Let's assume, yeah. So you've got all the bits.
All the bits. 2 days, 3 days. Yeah, not very long.
That's including wiring and everything.
Yeah, pretty. If you've got everything all painted, lined up, ready to put back together, yeah, 2 to 3 days. Provided if you want it bang on, because you've got to be. I mean, some of it you can just throw it together. It's just nuts and bolts. But other parts, you obviously have to set all your all your headstock up and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Cool.
This isn't actually a question. Another video request is basically saying, says, can you show how the cables go, especially to the carb? I'm trying to find the best route to maybe I can get my throttle to return by itself by adding a spring. Have you done anything like that?
You won't get one to return by itself.
Okay.
You can put a spring on because they're a push throttle.
Yeah.
Yeah? If it was a pull throttle,
yeah,
and it pulls the cable that way, yeah, you can put a bloody great spring on it and it'll pull it back. But Harleys, when you do that, it pushes the cable.
Right. Okay.
And they're a solid cable.
Yeah.
You see lots of people putting springs on them. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. The routing should be throttle cable. If you're sitting on it, it comes out the handlebars, drops down, and goes down the right hand side of the frame.
Yeah.
Now you either have a clip that goes on the bottom tank bolt, a P-clip on the bottom tank bolt that holds that outer cable from moving.
Yeah.
or you have off the cylinder head, one of the cylinder head studs, there's a bracket, an angled bracket that holds the cable. They did both of them. Now, what you got to do, if you put the clip on the frame,
Yeah.
you've got to make sure there's enough slack on it, because if you end up turning the handlebars,
Yeah.
you've got to have free play. If you get it wrong, the bike will speed up. So you go in a right hand corner or a left hand corner and it'll just accelerate. So you've got to make sure that there's enough free play in there for it all to work as such. But with all the original solid cables and all that, very, very unlikely you'll get one to return on its own. Yeah, they're just the way they are.
Gary Bianchi again. I was putting new springs on my WA front end. I had the front end off the frame trying to do this. Of course, the new springs were longer. The old ones were compressed due to age and usage. I tried to use ratchet strap, but again, I'm trying to do this with the front end off the frame.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, I played around for about 2 hours trying to get the new ones in. Finally, I gave up and put the 4 old compressed springs back into the front end. Now I get a complete set of new springs, but then now, after watching this video, one day I might get the chance to use them.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is ratchet strap them up as hard as you can, yeah? And then get a bit of tube, slide it over one, because you put your top springs on afterwards. Get a bit of tube and slide it over, yeah, one side. And if you've got your rockers in on the bottom end, then it won't cank it over too badly that way or that way. So just do that up on that bit of tube and it'll draw it up. And then you might be able to get the spring on that side, on the other side. Put your lock nut on and then wind that up and it should pull the whole lot up. Take your bit of tube out and then you hopefully get the spring in on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just another version of a puller, that's all it is. Yeah, I mean, you see people with fucking great bars doing this and that, but it's easier, just you're in control of it then if you wind it up. I've never bent a set of the bars that go up through, but you possibly could do. I've never bent one, so.
Okay. Charles Wiley. If you don't have a clutch hub nut wrench, how do you remove the clutch hub nut on a 45 Harley? Also, what is your method of securing the clutch hub from turning while removing or tightening the nut?
You can get a plate that just sits over your studs with lots of holes drilled in it. So if you've got access to a bit of 1/8 inch thick steel, drill some holes in it, weld a bar on it, slide that over the studs that hold the clutch on. And if you haven't got the right socket, basically it's a punch and a hammer. But it's a lot easier if you make sure that the tab washer bits are banged out first, because then once they've just popped, they should go. But if you haven't got the right socket, which I haven't, I've got to get one. It's just a matter of finding somebody who does one. All you can use is a nice square edge punch and just bang it loose. And then once you've got it off, you can file up all your dents and damage you've done, and then put it back on the same way. I tell you now, don't put thread lock on them, because they're an absolute pig of a thing to get back off again. So, yeah, don't put thread lock on those.
Another one from Kimo90808. I'm not getting a straight answer from many forums. Not sure anyone really knows. New Colony triple bolts seem soft. New European-made starter gear, not V-twin or Eastern. At the top of the return swing, after running through a kickstart manually, the shaft and starter gear get stuck, not returning the kicker lever all the way, and it feels rough. I've rotated the trippers that get gouged really easily. At this point, we're thinking the left side countershaft bushing. The one in the case might be causing this, as it's worn beyond dimensions mentioned in the manual. As a side note, when mocked up using a crescent wrench, rotating the opposite direction, it works wonderful and smooth. Also, the shaft is straight. We measured it for run out. The starter gear doesn't seem to be hanging up on the splines, and nothing looks odd at wit's end. Haven't got a Scooby-Doo.
Don't assemble it with the sealing washer in it when you first put it together, because they're just a pain in the arse, full stop. So if you've got, you shouldn't have hardly any end float at all on your cluster gear. Again, what we've just been through. Assemble it without the rubber sealing ring, because they can just jam everything up. They're like pig to get in. Making sure the spring in the end is in there. And jamming up, that would suggest it's possibly too tight when it's all done up, which it can be. I've had to put those bushes in on the kickstart side and put it in the milling machine and just take a couple of thou off of it. Obviously he knows all about the tripper bolts, making sure that they're not too rough edged. The clutch starter gear, possibly manufactured wrong, but doubtful. If it's jamming up on its way back up, it's too tight somewhere, which is an obvious statement, clearly. Just build the whole gearbox without any of the other gears in it. Just build it up on your cluster, on that side, on the kickstart side. Don't worry about putting all the rest in, and just make sure that you've got it all working, but don't put that rubber washer in until you're happy with it all working as it should do.
So almost do piece by piece.
Yes, the only way to do them.
Until you find what is causing it.
It's the only way to do them, yeah. Because if you physically, I mean, if you can get hold of that cluster gear when it's all bolted up properly and do that with it, it's wrong. If it's hard to turn, it's wrong. So you've got to work out where.
When it's starting to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And possibly if that end bush in the casing is completely worn out and they've replaced it, I've had those that are too fat on the shoulder, and when it's all bolted together it is just too tight.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
So you just got to literally, on the new bush that goes where your kickstart shaft comes through, just shave that very, very slightly on the milling machine.
Keep going until you find it free.
Yeah, you won't need to take a lot off of it. Just take enough off, so when you reassemble it, you want to end up with hardly any play, you know. Yeah. I know they're a pain in the arse, and they can be, but you've got to look at it just purely and simply as a logical engineering problem.
Yeah.
You've got a gap that wide, you've got something that fits inside it. If it's flapping up and down, it needs more spacers or whatever. If it's too tight, it needs something taken off.
Yeah.
That's it.